Hi there, it's Paulie here, with my companion, and we are travelling at the moment, so I did a whole lot of reviews to leave behind for you, because I wasn't going to carry heavy books on Indian public transport for 6 weeks while I'm exploring. I've been waiting for this to come out for quite some time. This is Swords of Cepheus, 2nd edition. I've been waiting for this because I've been wanting to run a campaign of this. So, Swords of Cepheus, what is it, you may ask? I'm glad you asked. This is essentially rules based on the old Traveller rule set. But these are done for sword and sorcery. In this case, sword and. That can be sword and sorcery, that can be sword and planet, or it could be sword and sandals. Sword and sorcery is something like Conan, where there is magic out there, but it's not kind of thrown around as a tool by main characters. It's a threat, but it is a mysterious world, and there are supernatural threats out there. Sword and planet is things like John Carter of Mars, which was a lovely sword-waving, swashbuckling sort of genre where either people from Earth are transported onto a cool planet where for some reason they have swords and flying vessels, or just stuff on far-off, intriguing but science fiction-like environments. And sword and sandals, that is your kind of traditional old kind of Romany or Greeky period adventures, be they Spartacus or Hercules versus the Amazon women, any of the old Peplum films, Odysseus, the Hunt for the Golden Fleece, all that sort of stuff, all those cool old films. But also in this is like a layer of post-apocalypse science fiction. Ruined world and so on, adventures crawling through the ruins, sword in one hand and a laser pistol with 4 shots left in the other. That sort of thing is under the general kind of sword and planet umbrella. And that's what these rules are for, that sort of thing. So, like Traveller long before it, this runs off a 2d6 system, and you are effectively looking for an 8 or higher to achieve a simple task. You roll 2 dice, you add in bonuses. If you have high characteristics, it might give you a bonus of 1 or 2 to the dice roll. And you also add your skill number to the dice roll. There are higher target numbers required for more difficult tests. So what do we got here? Yeah, an average one is 8 plus, difficult 10 plus, formidable 12 plus, etc. But in essence, 2d6, looking for an 8 or higher, and add your skill, and anything for exceptional characteristics. Now, your characteristics are things like strength and dexterity. They've got social, which is your kind of your charisma, your ability to manipulate people or understand people, and a bunch of others. These things are either rolled on 2d6, or there's a point system for splitting up scores, or a set of pre-done scores that you can put on the different characteristics. Here you've got 6 characteristics, so you can put down a 6, an 8, a 10, a 10, a 12, or it gives you several different ways for doing these. But like Traveller before it, you generate your skills by generating a little pre-adventure life for your character. You choose professions that you've had, and these professions give you some starting skills. So you decide where your character came from. Were you a child of the nobility? Are you from an urban area? Are you from a rural area? Are you from the mighty steppes, etc.? You get a couple of appropriate skills. Then you choose a profession for your character. Were you a pirate? Were you a merchant? Were you a soldier? Were you a nobleman? You might be a scholar. You might be a sorcerer. You might be a trickster. And there are different lists of skills that you can choose from. If your character has a education of 8 or higher, you can pick from the advanced education column. Otherwise you have to pick from like normal service columns. And you serve a term. Your character becomes 4 years older than when you started. I think you start as like a 16-year-old. So bing, you're 20, and you have this little slew of skills. depending on the arrangements of the umpire, you could stay in for extra terms and buy skills. You can even change profession if you want. So you might say, yes, I started off as a soldier, but then I turned to piracy, or I got promoted. Then I ended up as a noble. You can build kind of a tale for yourself, and it gives you some background, which is great fun. There are life events tied up in this, so you roll to see if things happen to you. There are specific events for each profession. You roll to see if things happen, and some of these are good, some of these are bad. They could give you injuries, they could generate enemies for you, they could generate allies for you, they could give you extra skills, they could give you strange bonuses under strange circumstances as you learn things. It could give you cross-train skills across to another profession, etc. There are also more general kind of life happenings, which can happen in a much broader sense. And again, these give some backstory to your character very often, as well as some skills and things. But there's, and they can be, there are different charts depending, background life events for you came from the city, you came from rural areas, So you will begin a game not as a bunch of numbers on a sheet of paper. You will begin with something of a backstory. You've been something before our story begins. Yep, you're a kid from the sticks. You turned to thievery, and somehow that led you into sorcery. Oh, okay. Or oh no, you're just that kid that you just wanted to explore. So you became a scholar, and you've picked skills that make that into a very exploring scholar. You've taken wilderness survival as well as sort of learning ancient languages and what have you. You build yourself nicely to a theme. So it's like it's a nice system for giving you that background. There are suggestions here for non-human characters. If you were in a setting that had them, saying this is what a dwarf might look like, this is what an elf might look like, if you have that sort of thing. This is what insectoids or desert-style kind of lizard men or swamp-style lizard men or Elric of Melniboné style Melnibonean antediluvians might look like, depending on the setting that the umpire has set up for you. These are the changes and little extra bits and pieces that a choice like that might get you. There are also a whole bunch of traits. You begin with traits and you gain more traits as it goes on, and these traits can be they can be kind of combat style things, they can be special moves that you can do. They can be things like your character is very aware, your character is very good at attacking people, you are great at backstabbing, your guy is very affable, your person is a performer. What do we got? You have allies. Danger sense, your character is a berserker, your character is very empathic, you are hardy, you're a mighty hunter. Your character somehow has immunity to diseases other people has. You have a familiar, you're followed by a ghost. You're very low profile and easily forgotten. You're incredibly beautiful and easily it's easy to seduce people with. You have a mystic aura about you. You have additional kind of sorcerer abilities. You have a strange sort of profession of some sort. These are you have the gift of prophecy. They're all kinds of sort of things that you can do, and these give your character a bit of an extra bite, a little bit of an extra bit of colour for that whole kind of swords and setting. They haven't split things up in hundreds of different weapons and so on the way Original Traveller did. So you are skilled in like melee combat. That's it. The skill is melee combat. You can take traits and so on that say you have a favoured weapon. Yeah, I have melee combat too, but I have a favoured weapon, which is the mighty sword. And if I use, if I use the Snargothan dueling sword, or if I use a broadsword or whatever, that's an extra +1. But only for swords of that sort. I don't get it for axes, no siree. I don't get it for short swords. I don't get it for cleavers, and I don't get it for egg beaters. Just that mighty broadsword. So you can do that and give your character a shtick. So they have a couple of differences from the original Traveller in this. Original Traveller, when you took damage, it came off your physical characteristics, strength, endurance, and dexterity. This does not do that. This has basically a life's blood characteristic. It has a essentially a hit points characteristic, which comes off your character's endurance and its athletics skill levels. So if you take athletics, if your character is athletic, it means you're fit and tough and brawny, and therefore harder to kill. So the damage comes initially off that. There's stamina and there's lifeblood. So when you attack someone, you will whittle down their stamina first, and that stamina is kind of an easy recovered damage bank. As long as your stamina hasn't reached 0, at the end of a fight you can actually kind of get it back after a couple of hours of rest. You've got cuts and scrapes and bruises and what have you. But when your stamina reaches 0, they're actually attacking your lifeblood. They're actually doing actual injuries that actually can do terrible things to you. If your lifeblood gets to half, you take a negative now on all of your rolls, so it's snowballing against you. If your lifeblood gets to 0, then you dead. Characters can roll to sort of try and survive it. They start kind of bleeding out. So yes, there's a chance for people to come in and use their healing skills to save you and all that kind of jazz. But you do a triage roll at the end of this, and there might be more permanent injuries involved. You might have lost a hand, you might have lost an eye, you might have lost characteristic points. This isn't D&D where someone goes blah, 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 and your injuries magically vanish. So pick your fights wisely. Yes, you can be Conan and stride in there waving swords, but remember, Conan and Co had scars, and they had scars for a reason. That's because they failed the triage rolls. There are good rules in this for chases, chase on horseback, chases on chariot back, foot chases, all these sorts of things. Combat, they've given you a couple of options, but in essence what you are doing is you are rolling against your opponent as a... you can either decide to just do a straight I go, you go system, or you can do a system where it's a contested roll between two people, but either way their skill comes in. Their best combat or missile skill can be used as a defense, because they presume that you're really good at ducking and dodging and so on, as well as firing bows and what have you. This is a spry and nimble person. They've got that level of abstraction to it. But the better combat skilled someone is, the harder it is to hit them. Thank you. Weapons do dices of damage. Armor subtracts from that damage, but armor can also put you at a disadvantage for doing agility-based things and endurance-based things. They've got a simple advantage-disadvantage system for rolling skills, which was missing in Original Traveller as well. So if something has happened to advantage or disadvantage you, you can, instead of rolling 2 dice, you take 3 dice and take the best. If you're advantaged, if you're disadvantaged, you roll 3 dice and take the worst. And that can just simply be that beyond skill, it's pitch black and you're trying to shoot someone. Okay, well, yeah, you're a great shot, but you can't see too well. Or if you take that heavy damage, if you've lost from your lifeblood, then you are disadvantaged in combat because, you're streaming blood and holding one arm. A nice simple mechanism that does put an extra layer of nuance to play beyond Original Traveller. Magic system is you gain spells depending on your level of sorcery. There's a pretty extensive list of spells and so on here, and casting magic is absolutely dangerous, because if you fail skill rolls to create these spells, you start gaining corruption, and some of the spells have corruption effects in any case, and as your corruption grows, essentially you start to gain a chance of getting mutations, so you can mutate really horribly, and you also get spell mishaps which happen if you attempt to do spells and fail. terrible things can happen. Nth dimensional beasts can suddenly come out of the rifts that you accidentally created. Plagues can spread. Bones rise from the ground. Bad things can happen. So sorcery is extremely risky, and in that kind of sword and sorcery style, what they're basically saying is, again, this isn't Dungeons and Dragons. This isn't a technology that's designed for you to just fling around willy-nilly. It's special, it has to be used sparingly, and remember, it can just whip around and bite you like a snake. So, be careful out there, folks. So that gives it a much different vibe to like most fantasy games out there. Riddle of Steel is way more the thing. There is a really extensive list of creatures in this and how to create them, and because it's covering fantasy and essentially kind of science fiction environments, because we need to cover something as weird as Barsoom or the 1930s novel set in Venus or what have you, they've done a really nice job, again, taking a leaf from original Traveller's books where they identify there are different kind of niches in a environment, and you create creatures that fill those niches. So this is a chase predator that lives in this grassland area. It basically runs down things like herbivores and bites them. This is a big armored herbivorous behemoth that forts up with a group of its kin, and it tries to hold off the predators and shelter the young ones in the middle and so on. With these kind of general guidelines, you can make all kinds of amazing environments. You can obviously put lions and tigers and bears and bison, oh my, and make the Serengeti, or make something like Pleistocene era Earth with saber-toothed tigers and terror birds. Easy to do. But you could also use this to make dinosaurs of the lost world. Here's where you create your raptors and your ankylosaurs and your pachycephalosauruses and these sorts of things. You can make all of these. Or a weird science fiction environment where, yes, this is where I make my strange insect swarm that closes in on people. This is where I make some kind of strange, bobbit worm that comes out of the ground. This is where I make a lake that's not a lake. It's actually kind of a giant amoeba or group of slime molds that cooperate together and just sort of seem to live like a lake. You can make weird things. So if you liked Wade and Douglas Barlow's expedition or something, you can make all those creatures. You can do it all, which is the flexibility of a Traveller style system. You're not stuck with a bestiary, you're not stuck with a world. They have massive creatures here. So they've got lions and they've got your tigers and they've got undead and they've got all sorts of things. And they have a huge slew of characters in here to use as well. Here are princesses and mercenaries and pirates and bandits and merchants and peasants, and they've got them all in here, all listed out with skills and so forth. They have a bunch of adventure seeds in here, and a bunch of tables to help you make adventures off the cuff. So NPC generators, and Traveller and this have always been fairly famous for having patron generators, where you create that person that brings you a job. What do they want? So there's rules in here for encounters, there's rules for potions and gems and jewellery and treasure and so on. This is not a game where you're going to be getting a ton of like +1 magic swords and so on. But there are guidelines there for making magical things, but they should be legendary. We're not wandering around with a +1 sword. We got Excalibur, baby, and everyone else wants it. Why I was waiting for this, I always found the Traveller system, and by extension the Cepheus system, to be incredibly flexible. You can make any kind of world you want, and really any kind of adventures you want with that system. And to have this one fine-tuned for creating professions and so on, suitable to that sword and planet, sword and sorcery, sword and sandals kind of universe is great because you get that 2d6 system which works really, really well. The characters are sort of robustly expressed. They're not games of escalating ridiculous powers and superpowers the way a lot of modern games are. So there's that kind of nerd factor where someone that's a rules lawyer can start beating people to death with their knowledge of a book. That's not in here. The skills are simple enough, you know, small numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, it'll be 0, 1, 2 or 3, face it. You might have a trait which gives you some colour. As the game goes on, you'll get more skills and you will earn more traits. The equipment is going to be doing, you know, mundane but useful things. It's going to be absorbing damage. It's going to be weapons that work, you know, in a set way. It's going to be tools that you'll need. It's not an environment where there's going to be 400 million weird magical things that, you know, make all of the equipment and skills completely redundant. What I wanted to do with this is basically run something a little akin to like a Gamma World. I wanted to do a post-apocalyptic setting. Do like an Andre Norton style Starman Sun sort of post-apocalyptic world. This would be choice for doing that. And there are some little rules in here for high-tech weapons and these sorts of things, what they are, what you find. And of course you can roll over stuff from normal Traveller as well. Hey, here's a laser pistol. What does it do? Well, the damage is in the same brackets as this, so yeah, laser pistol is really going to cook you. That's bad. On the other hand, you've only got 12 shots in the battery. Use them well, my friend. So yeah, that was what I've been waiting for this for. There was an earlier edition of this, Swords of Cepheus First Ed. Differences in this one, I think the main differences are the damage system in this has that stamina, lifeblood, the advantaging and disadvantaging for people who are injured and so on. And this has, I think it probably has a lot more scope as far as setting goes. It's not just sort of a sword and sorcery thing. It's given you what you need for a broader array of adventures. The cover, I loved it. It's our heroes, one of them firing a laser pistol, surrounded by lizard men in some sort of desert. Pretty much the game I feel like running, except usually I'll be leading the lizard men. So yeah, so this is the game for running Conan style adventures, for running John Carter of Mars style adventures, for running like, you know, a Search for the Golden Fleece or you know, Odysseus, or anything inspired by cool old sword and sandals movies, things set in ancient Egypt, things set in, you know, Rome. Yeah, I love old sword and sword and sandals movies. You know, so some of my favourite rewatches are things like, you know, Samson and Delilah, or Demetrius and the Gladiators. That is a fantastic film. Find it if you can. Demetrius and the Gladiators, 5-star, brilliant piece of work. Quo Vadis, love it. These would be the choice rules for doing that. They won't admire you down in detail. You will come out with colourful characters that have some background to them. It's got that Traveller thing where you can kind of measure everyone against everyone else. There's no kind of like superhumans just wandering around. Surprise! I've got 500 million super special powers that none of you realised I had. Just, no, that guy's tough and a great swordsman. Maybe keep away. Yeah, it's a grounded game. A grounded game that gives a damn good fantasy adventure. Swords of Cepheus, 2nd edition. This is from Stellar Gamma, who are great guys. I love everything they do. Find it. You won't regret it. Great piece of work. It's going to be my choice for running fantasy games for a while to come, I think. Just that simplicity of that Traveller system and the flexibility of that Traveller style system put into Sword and. Love it. Alright, Mr. Snoots. Okay, hopefully we see you guys around the games table sometime soon. Until then, look after yourselves. Bye-bye. Bye, bonds. Whee! Push. Bonk.